Welcome to From the Eyes of Wisdom, where we pair an experienced elder from Christa Senior Living with a passionate King's High School student ready to launch into the world. Here's Sherry Lynn.
Welcome to From the Eyes of Wisdom. I am your host, Sherry Lynn, and I am so grateful to have Jan here with us and Makayla, both radio gals. We'll get into it, but I was very excited when I saw your pre-interviews, and I was like, oh, we got a radio trifecta in here. Jan used to do radio stuff. You did the radio logs and worked the FCC, and then you were on the air a couple times playing the pianos with people. We'll get into all of that, but yeah. And Makayla, right now you are interning at the radio network.
Yes, I am.
Makayla, you are a senior.
Yes, I am.
Okay, senior and have applied to college?
Yes, I'm going to Northwest University.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. So you already know where you're going.
Yes, I'm committed and everything.
Okay,
I'm very excited.
Okay, wonderful. That's different than a lot of kids that will be coming in here. They're kind of still up in the air. So, okay, studying what?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay, not committed to that, so not sure what you're studying.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of what you'd like to study?
Not yet. I'm just praying for whatever God has in mind for me and
direction. That's what Jan was talking about before we got on the air, praying for direction. Okay, so just kind of thinking through, do you have any kind of leaning towards anything while you're in school right now? Is there anything you enjoy or...
I love this radio internship. It's very exciting. And if I had to go into media or something like that, it would definitely be radio station.
Okay. All right. You're going to need 5 or 6 jobs to supplement your income, but we can talk about that later. All right. So nobody told me, Jan. Yeah. They didn't tell me. Yeah. They didn't tell me I was going to have 5 or 6 jobs for the first 10 years, but amen, God worked it all out. Okay, so you are already going to college, still wondering or thinking about what your major is going to be. Yeah. And going to a Christian school, tell me how important that has been and why.
So I did not go to a Christian middle school or elementary school. And when I was in 6th grade, I realized that for high school, I really wanted to go to a faith-based school where teachers and students were looking at God in every aspect of their life in education and beyond. And
why was that important?
I wanted to do that because I wanted to grow in my faith and because God's my number one thing in my life. I wanted to put that first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I ask you that because, Jan, you sort of had the same kind of experience where it was like, hey, this is important. I need to be at a Christian school. And give us a little bit of that path of you kind of going through the same thing.
Well, it was so interesting. I grew up on a ranch in Montana. And we were very close with our church family in one county. But our ranch was in another county, and so I was required to go to a high school in that county where Mom and Dad knew of no Christians. It was a rough and tumble cowboy town.
Yeah.
And our whole church family was in the other county. And when we realized that I had no choice but to go to the ranch, or the high school in the one county, Mom and Dad looked into King's, and I was able to come out here, and I lived in the girls' dorm.
Wow.
I had the best dorm parents in the world. In fact, some of their kids are still kids and grandkids. We're like family. And that's the other thing. Coming here as a teenager, I came in 57.
Okay.
And I'm still close to a lot of those kids. In fact, some of them we meet with weekly.
Wow.
Have dinner together.
Weekly.
Take vacations together. The Lord was so good to put me in just an absolutely warm environment. We had the best dorm parents in the world. And
were you in your ninth grade
when I came?
What was the shock, or was there shock, of leaving home and being in a dorm? Do you remember that? Now I'm not, because I remember that in college.
Yes.
I remember that feeling of, my co-host Brant and I were talking about the feeling of, like, okay, so who's washing these clothes? I remember that very specifically in college. Like, wait a minute, these clothes are still dirty. Oh my goodness. Who's more clean clothes. It was like, I'm supposed to
Yeah.
Wait a minute, with what?
Yeah.
Where? Like, it's not that my mom didn't teach me, but it was just that cycle of you don't realize how much your parents do for you until you're gone. And then it's like, wait a minute, there's a whole cycle of things I'm supposed to be doing for myself as a functioning human.
Wow.
That I don't think. But in ninth grade, I would think that there would be some kind of feeling of, wow, I'm by myself.
Well, growing up on a ranch, we didn't have much hired help. And so I grew up driving tractor from the time and truck in the 4th grade.
Oh, wow.
And went to a small school.
Okay.
There were 8 grades, and there were, just maybe 15, 20 of us.
Yeah.
And so you learn a lot of independence.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yes.
That makes sense.
And then when I was 9, my mom had my brother.
Okay.
And he became part mine.
Yeah.
And so I always had a lot of responsibility.
Okay. That makes sense.
And so in many ways, I think I was more, it was easier for me to adapt to being in a dorm. I missed my parents, but I had the best dorm parents and roommates, still close with a couple of those roommates.
Yeah.
And it was, and I had aunts and uncles who lived up in Everett.
Okay.
And so I'd see them on weekends.
Okay, so there was family around too.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
That makes sense.
But, everybody who worked here, we were family. No doubt about it. And I'm still close to a lot of them.
Tell me the importance of a Christian atmosphere, or an atmosphere that helps. I'll even shy away from just even like using religious terms like Christian. Something, an atmosphere that reinforces your faith, constantly just being in that atmosphere that is enriching your faith. Because if I'm correct, Makayla, that's why you picked Northwestern, right?
Yes, that is.
Okay, you wanted to go, you wanted to continue to be in an atmosphere where your faith is being reinforced.
Yes.
Okay, so tell me, well, let me do this. You tell me why that was important for you, and then I'm going to go to you, Jan, and tell me how it helped you. So tell me why that was important.
So
For college. Yeah.
Lots of kids, once they go to college, they stray away from their faith.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make sure that when I went to college, I would get stronger in my faith and continue to put God first.
Yeah. All right. So, Jen, tell me what it meant to you to be in a place that was constantly affirming your faith.
That's the environment I also grew up in.
Okay.
So it was so strengthening. And our dorm parents just let us. We had devotions every night. Of course, we had chapel in school.
Yeah.
And all of our teachers were strong in their faith. And it was such a great example for us. Now, at that point in the 50s, teachers were working here for almost nothing. And yet they came to work here because they felt it was a mission field for them and they could express their faith.
Okay.
And there were many teachers that were so beyond just teaching in a high school. We had Mr. Inouye who actually just started teaching when I left, and he taught here for years. But he'd been an engineer at Boeing for years.
Wow.
And he just really felt he wanted to change kids' lives.
Yeah.
And he was everybody's favorite, and he just loved us, listened to us, strengthened our faith, encouraged us, challenged us. We had great Bible teachers, and a lot of them had been missionaries. And so they brought what their faith had brought them through in tough times.
Yeah.
But actually, everybody who worked here were like missionaries.
Well, I guess so. If you're not making a lot of money and you're excellent in your field, you would have to be doing it as an active ministry.
Yes. Yeah. Let me tell you, when I came, the staff was making $40 a month. plus they would get their room and board. Now this is for for couples too.
Yeah.
And so maybe they might have 2 rooms up in the Martin Center, the administration building, and we had communal meals, which was absolutely incredible. So we worked with the staff and their families. We had supper and breakfast with the other kids.
So the kids, the staff, everyone had meals together.
Yes.
Okay.
And it was, it was almost like a commune, but the basic of everything was our faith.
Yeah.
These were very humble people.
Yeah.
A lot of the staff went without in order to work here.
I think it's so important, Makayla, on the front end here as you're launching out into life, to define what is valuable. Because what I hear you saying, Jan, is that there just seems to be, it's yourself and a lot of people that you witnessed during this time that had a definition of something that was valuable that the world or the culture may not have considered valuable, but it was valuable to them. Yeah. So the money wasn't $40 a month. You can't get anything for $40 in a day nowadays. You know what I mean? So there must be something more valuable for you, right? That compels you to do it. So if I had to ask you, Makayla, maybe you were like, I don't know, Sherry, ask me in 2 years. What is valuable to you as you go off into college? What is of value? What's valuable? Like, what's valuable?
Probably my family, the will of God, what He thinks of me, what He wants for me, things like that.
Okay.
Not anything in material form, but more of...
So just God's will.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And relationships, things like that.
Okay. All right. Jan, when you're getting out of high school, okay, high school's over, are you... Because there's a lot of pressure on kids now. It's like, doggone it, you're in like 10th or 11th. I was in when I was in high school, so I can't imagine what it is now. Like, it's like you have to have your whole life planned out. Do you feel that way?
Yeah. Lots of people ask sophomores nowadays, like, what do you want to do with your life? What college are you going to?
Yeah. I just started being able to make peanut butter and jelly by myself. I really don't know, sir. I really don't know. So it's this pressure to have your whole life planned out. And so when I was listening to your pre-interview, it just sounded as if you had this kind of trust in God that it was like, okay, this thing. All right, now this thing. Hey, how about that thing? And that God was kind of with you within all of those things. It didn't seem like an intense amount of anxiety to plan next thing. But did I read that wrong? Was that?
No,
that's okay. So so you're leaving high school because you went from high school to the radio station?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, I was in my senior year and in my speech class, and my speech teacher asked me to stay after class, and she said, Jan, I'd like you to go down and talk to my husband, Bob Ball. He was the manager here of an AM and FM station.
Okay.
You know, much smaller, less sophisticated than we have today by 5,000%.
Well, believe me,
but you know, I remember walking down and talking to him. And this was like April, something like that. And he said, would you consider coming to work? And I told him yes. We had a choir tour after high school called the King's Royal Airs. And we took that tour after we graduated and then came back. And I lived on the campus in a room up in Martin Center. Walked down here every morning, was here by 8 o'clock and had the coffee going. And we were family.
Yeah.
We had incredibly gifted people working here. And we had a woman's program called Over the Coffee Cup.
Okay.
And every single one of those people either had been missionaries or teachers, or
That's a nice title.
over those years, they were 5 or 6 women who, kind of were in and out, depending on where their lives were going. But they were possibly, I'm sure they weren't making $40 an hour.
Yeah. But
If
they're
that's
having a
all they
show.
did.
Over a Coffee Cup was a radio show.
Yes.
And then it's also my understanding that somebody come in, they're going to sing or something, and Jan's like, all right, I got the piano.
Yeah.
And you would come...
Yeah.
You come in and play the piano for the person who's going to sing over the air.
Yes. But it was called Morning Cheer, I think it was.
Okay.
And Frank Boggs, who was, he had sung opera.
Okay.
And he had become a Christian, and he walked in and he told me the song and the key. And I said, okay. And I did an intro, and he looked at me and he started to sing. And there were 2 versions of the song. He was singing one, and I was playing the other.
This is live on the air?
Yes. I was mortified, but we figured it out.
Figured it out on the air. See, Makayla?
But years later, my husband and I were coming down an escalator at it was some kind of a Christian conference.
Yeah.
And he was there singing. And he was coming down, and I was going up, and I saw him first.
Oh, wow.
He just blew me a kiss.
Oh, yeah. Remember that time we were on the air, and I was singing the wrong note, you were playing the wrong note? That's so great. That's one of the beautiful things of radio that's not here anymore, and why I love it. It's why I love theater too, is because it was always teetering on disaster. Like at any given moment, it can all fall to pieces, and you have to make it work, right? Like, what are we gonna do? Just stop and be like, never mind, Frank, and turn all the mics off? We have to keep going.
Yeah.
And so you figure it out. I just love that. That's one of my favorite things about what radio was, which you said was that kind of communal thing. And I'm guessing, Makayla, it's still what you feel interning here, is that family kind of atmosphere where everyone has to pull together to make something happen.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things about radio. So
And the opportunity that you have to work with people who are strong in their faith. They're different from your family, but you get to see it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about your husband. How long was your marriage?
Oh my. We were married 68 to 21.
Wow.
When he died.
Wow.
And he was ahead of me in high school.
Okay.
6'8".
Whoa.
So everybody knew him.
Wow.
Bob Screen. And he was working in radio as he was going through Seattle Pacific. So that's kind of how I got to know him.
Okay.
But we didn't date for several years.
Okay.
And he finished college, and then he came back to manage the radio station.
Okay.
And he was a very creative man.
Okay.
So he had a lot of insight.
Was he your boss at that point?
Yes.
Oh, he was. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
He was managing both radio stations.
Okay.
And he ended up years later having his own advertising agency. And
Oh, okay. Wow.
worked with absolutely incredible people. Focus on the Family, and Moody Bible Institute, and Moody Church. And
Yeah. It sounded like when I was listening to your pre-interview that you all had a very exciting life. An exciting life, meaning, Makayla, you put it this way in your pre-interview because they asked you about, and maybe I'll ask you to put it in your own words. They asked you what you would ask Jan if you were sitting, and you said something about a God adventure. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Can you put it in your own words?
So I heard someone say, my Bible teacher, that following God could be the best, or that God, when you follow him, he leads you on the best adventure in your life.
Yeah.
So my question was, would you say that's true? And then if so, how would you say that he led you?
Well, it is true. And I think when you are following God's leading, he goes before you and he prepares you for the next adventure. And he gives you the experience that you need to go through that. And you know, I just finished high school. Most of our friends were at least had 4 years of college and doctors and doctorates and things like that. It just opened my eyes to just a much wider world.
Yeah.
Like, we'd be at a dinner, and I was sitting with Dr. Bright and was able to have conversations with him.
Yeah. And this is all because your teacher says to you after class, hey, I think you should go down to the radio station.
Yeah.
And you got on the radio station, like, hey, why don't you work here? Like, it's those kind of God moments that I really hope, Makayla, when you and your peers are listening to Jan and her peers, their stories and their lives, that you hear that God is so invested in walking with us every day that you don't have to plan every single solitary moment of your life out, because that's what's kind of given. Did you plan this? Did you plan that? Did you plan this? Did you plan that? You plan that? You can't plan your teacher saying, Jan, can you stay after class? God does that for you.
Yes.
Right? And then now your husband, or your soon-to-be husband, or will-be husband, is the manager of the radio station. You know what I mean? God does those things for us.
He was 3 years ahead of me in high school. And then he'd gone through Seattle Pacific, and he'd worked for the president of Seattle Pacific also.
Yeah.
So he was really well situated to come in and take over as manager of the two radio stations, because he had a good business head on him.
Yeah.
And then to go on into advertising with Christian organizations.
Yeah.
We were so blessed by the people that came into our lives over and over and over and over again. Yeah.
I heard the story in your pre-interview, and I am going to ask you to tell it again. And it's because in your pre-interview, Makayla, they asked you about fear. Do you remember what you said? What's like your biggest fear?
Yeah, and I said that losing my family was one of my greatest fears, or probably the greatest fear I have.
And so I'm going to ask you to tell the story about your parents. And the reason why I'm going to ask you to tell the story about your parents is because sometimes I think the biggest thing we fear can happen, and God is still there.
Yeah.
And he still walks with us.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to ask you to tell that story.
Well, Mom and Dad were simple people.
Yeah.
Good Norwegians, very involved in their church and leadership over the years. Solid family, lots of love.
Yeah.
And
Montana, right?
in Montana. And Mom and Dad had just left to go to Minnesota in a snowstorm.
Yeah.
And we think that there was an accident. We think that Dad got off looking for a place to get a cup of coffee, and it was just two grain elevators out in the middle of nowhere. And as he thought he was getting back on, this was in 75, and so freeway was new to Montana. So as Dad thought he was getting back on the freeway, it was actually the old highway that they had cut through to build the freeway. Dad could not see that there were 3 or 4, 5 posts across the size of telephone posts that were across the road because it was no longer available.
Yeah.
And then snow had covered everything. So Dad had just turned onto this thinking he was going to get on the freeway, and they were in a Volkswagen van, and Dad hit one of those posts, and he was thrown out and killed instantly. They found him sitting down in a frozen position, sitting down, sliding, that he'd slid up against this post. So Mom was sleeping, and she had a blanket over her in a Volkswagen van. When Dad hit that, Mom fell on the floor of the car, and the car rolled. And they were found approximately 15 hours later by a rancher when he went to feed his cattle. And I listened to the State Patrol let me listen to that call.
Did you ask to listen to it?
Pardon?
Did you ask to listen to that call? So I'm not sure I could have handled that.
Well, see, by then, Dad was killed.
Yeah.
It was within the first week
Yeah.
that I heard that call because this was in the middle of nowhere. There was no hospital. So the ambulance had taken Mom to this tiny little town called Forsyth. It's on Highway 10, eastern part of the state. And so that's where we found her. We got there the next afternoon.
Okay.
My husband was wonderful.
Yeah.
Getting everything together. I had the best neat girls' Bible study that we were close, and our kids were like cousins, and we met every week. And so I just made one phone call, and I said, "Can you find a place for Stephen to stay?" Stephen was 3.
That's your son. That's your son.
Yes. And Sarah was 4 months.
Oh, wow.
And
Jeez.
My girlfriends came up. They grabbed Stephen's things out of the house, and they said, "We'll take care of him." And I knew that he would be fine in any of their homes, because we were all close.
That's the beauty of community.
Oh, it was so wonderful. And I was trying to pack, and I realized I need something to wear to a memorial service. We need to, but it's a blizzard in Montana as I'm thinking about this. So my husband was wonderful. One of his staff drove us to the airport, and we were with Mom for about 4 days in this tiny little nursing center. And I'd been talking to our family doctor in California, and he'd said, you have to get her to a bigger hospital. I think you should try and go to Great Falls. My husband drove back up to Great Falls, but then Sarah, who was 4 months old, was strapped to my chest, and we rode in the plane with the air ambulance and took us to Great Falls. And then the next day was my dad's memorial service. So we'd planned it with the people in the church. But, they were so much a part of the church that it just came together beautifully.
Can I ask you, and then I'll ask you what you think about all of it, Makayla, because I know that's a lot to take in. What you know about Jesus from just that, all of that that happened.
He just held our hands and walked through each step and provided what we needed to understand, the doctors we needed. When it was time to put Mom on a stretcher and fly her out to Los Angeles to get her in a better hospital.
Yeah. Daily bread, it sounds like he gave you daily bread. What you needed for that day.
Yes, because that's all we could handle.
So,
yeah. We never could have done it without the Lord. And, we got her to LA, and I think she lived about 10 more years.
Wow.
Oh.
And she was even able to live independently for part of that time. Yeah. Then we moved her up here when we came back home. And God was so good. He just always directed our direction.
Makayla, let me ask you what you know about Jesus from that story. Like what that gives, how you see, or like, okay, that tells me this about his nature or character.
So from your story, I can see how he's the ultimate father, how he loved your family and you through that, and how he was comforting you and providing for you through that. Just the love that, like perfect love that he has for you.
What about for your own life? What hope does it give you for your life as you're launching out? Because you're launching out.
Yeah. Oh no. That whatever happens, he will always love me. And if anything does happen, he is the one who provides ultimate comfort. And I can rest easy knowing that there's peace through him.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you think at this stage of your life, if I said, Jan, what was your purpose? Because there's a lot of discussion at their age and beyond, actually, about purpose. Purpose. What's your purpose? Who's your purpose? What's the purpose? Purpose. But here you are. Okay. You lived a very rich, full, blessed life. Mm-hmm. What was your purpose? What do you think if someone said that? Because I always hear people ask people, what is your purpose? But when you're at a certain stage of life to say, what is your or what was your purpose? Okay, when you look back over your life, what do you feel like your purpose was?
I was an encourager.
I love that.
I also feel like it's important that we have our eyes open so we see where people are hurting or where they would just love affirmation.
Yeah.
Affirmation is in such short supply these years. And you start affirming someone, just even if it's a hello every day and a smile and maybe a cup of coffee or something, you see them begin to blossom.
Yeah.
Because one, they're being heard. Two, they're being encouraged.
Yeah. That is so rich. It can seem almost not cliche, but I wanted to sit there because it's so other-centered. And we as a culture are so self-centered.
Yeah.
And I'm a little afraid because as a church, we've become a little self-centered. It's self this, self that, self-care, self-love, self-that. Which, okay, but that's just not... That's not validated in the Bible. It's just not. It's you taking care of you. The Bible assumes you will do that. So it's not telling you, make sure you take care of you. It assumes you will always take care of you. But it does tell us to do what you just got done saying, Jan. Over and over. It's called one anothering, right? Encourage, affirm.
Yeah.
People are starving for it.
Yes.
So if you can get to a point in your life, Makayla, and you're like, that's what I did for 7 decades, I encourage people. That is one great life. That's one great life. Yeah. It really is. All right, the last thing, I'm going to give you this card. I do this with everyone, Makayla. That's yours, and that pen is yours. Jan, I'm going to ask you, Makayla's going to take this card with her all through life. She's taking it to college, and she's going to have it at her wedding, and then she's going to have it with her kids, and then she's going to have it with her grandkids. No pressure. One piece of wisdom, one thing that she needs to know for life, based on the wonderful life that God has given you and has allowed you to live. What would that one piece of wisdom she would need to know or need to have be?
Always know that God wants to walk with you. He wants to nurture you and lead you. And if you can keep that as your emphasis in whatever you do and whoever you are with, it will change your life.
That's so good. He wants to. I want you to underline wants to, because there's going to be times in your life that you're going to question that.
Yeah.
You're going to question but he wants to.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite scriptures is when the guy has, I think it's his hand is shriveled or something. And he says to Jesus, if you want to, you can make me whole. And Jesus says, I want to. And he reaches out and he touches him. So he wants to nurture you. He wants to walk with you. He wants to be with you. If you can keep that's a good piece of life advice, Jan.
Good.
That's good.
I mean, I'm so far from having it all together. But it's that simple.
Yeah.
You know, it's, Lord, keep my eyes open. Let me hear what I need to hear.
Yeah.
How can I encourage these people?
How can I encourage these people? If you can do that in every room you walk into, how can I encourage these people? No matter what the room is, well, no matter what college, wherever, we can walk in and say, how can I encourage these people? That takes so much pressure off, because now it's not about me. Now it's not about, I hope I don't look dumb. Now I hope I don't say something awkward. Now I hope I don't trip over the curb. You know, it's something done. How can I encourage these people today? Then that takes the complete focus off of self. And that now it's just about, okay, now I'm here to encourage you. And I really do think God will honor that.
I agree.
I do. All right. Date that, and then Jan's going to sign that card. And while she's doing that, I'm going to tell everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of From the Eyes of Wisdom. We thank Jan and we thank Makayla. Thank you guys for being here. You were wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we'll talk to you next episode.
Thanks for listening. We just wanted to take a minute to let you know that just like you and your family, Purposely is also part of a family, the Krista family of ministries. Krista helps kids and teens learn and grow in their faith at King Schools and Miracle Ranch Camp. And Krista shares Jesus with people in the poorest, most remote places through World Concern. Krista Senior Living is a community of love and care, and Krista Media is a place of hope on the radio. God is changing lives through these 5 ministries, and Krista is on mission to share the good news of Jesus. To learn more, visit Krista.org.